Welcome to Cinema Wellman. I am your host, David, and today we're going to kick off a new segment that we're going to call Director's Corner. Each Director's Corner episode will feature a different director, along with what we consider to be some of their best films. Some will be top 10, bottom 5 lists, some will consist of only a handful of favorites, while others will attempt to rank a director's entire filmography top to bottom. Each director is different, so each episode of Director's Corner will be unique as well. Already scheduled to sit in the chair, the director's chair, in Cinema Wellman's Director's Corner are Wes Anderson, Stanley Kubrick, and Joel and Ethan Coen. It will surprise absolutely no one that I keep a list of directors and the number of films of theirs that I've seen. A director makes the list when I've seen 5 of their films. That list currently features 408 directors. The statistical number 1 on the list is Michael Curtis, the great director of Casablanca. To date, I've seen 44 of his films. Excuse me. Curtis may be number 1 on that list, but he will not be the focus of this Premier Director's Corner episode. Instead, I decided to kick things off with a person who I consider my favorite director when push comes to shove and I'm forced to give an answer, and that would be Sir Alfred Hitchcock. So I should have opened by saying, good evening. And I almost started in profile, but I didn't want to. Cheesy. According to my friends at the IMDb's, Hitchcock has 69 directing credits. When you subtract unfinished films, films where he went uncredited, shorts, or television episodes, that number is down to 55. As of right now, I've seen 38 films directed by Alfred Hitchcock. That puts him in second on the big list to Curtis, but Hitch will be in the director's chair for our first Director's Corner. Since I've seen so many Hitchcock films, I started to make a list of his trademarks. I wanted to have a working list of things to look for in his films. When I was teaching Edgar Allan Poe, I had a list of Poe characteristics that I had students look for when we were reading his stories. That list included items such as bloodshed, downward movement, gloom, and mystery. I decided to put together such a list for the films of Alfred Hitchcock. I was halfway through my list and went back to IMDb during my research, as I always do, and much to my surprise and amusement, IMDb had done the same thing. It's a short little film that highlights directors' trademarks, they call it, and has accompanying video clips to showcase that. It is brilliant. I was very pleased to see that every item that I came up with was also on IMDb's list. They had more than I did, but everything that I came up with, they also had. Here's what we came up with. Murder plot. Blonde victim. Hitchcock once said, blondes make the best victims. They're like the virgin snow that shows up bloody footprints. Brilliant. Character on the run. Character falsely accused. Foreboding shadows. Ominous staircases. Doppelgangers. Who doesn't love a doppelganger? Suave villains, voyeuristic perspective, ticking clocks, conversations on trains, newspaper headlines, handwritten notes, famous landmarks, deep focus composition, gripping climaxes, costumes by Edith Head, music by Bernard Herrmann, a Hitchcock cameo, and a MacGuffin. For those of you that need a refresher, film school refresher, a MacGuffin is an object, device, or an event that is necessary to the plot and to the motivation of the characters, but insignificant, unimportant, or irrelevant in itself. Thank you, Wikipedia. The MacGuffin seems like it's the most important part of the film, but many times the film ends without any questions being answered MacGuffin-wise. Think Marcellus Wallace's briefcase in Pulp Fiction, Charles Foster Kane's final word, Rosebud, in Citizen Kane, and the dude's Persian rug in The Big Lebowski, or the Maltese Falcon in The Maltese Falcon. Alfred Hitchcock is forever connected with the MacGuffin because of his use of them in his films. In an interview, Hitch once referred to a MacGuffin as, quote, nothing at all, end quote. In a way, he's quite correct. For this premiere episode of Director's Corner, I've chosen my top 13, Hitch would approve of the number, films directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and I've ranked them in order of my preference. Please note that they are all worthy of a viewing. If you've previously seen one, trust me, they're definitely worth another look. I rescreened all 13 of these films for this episode, and it was delightful. Since this is not a spoiler alert episode, don't worry about me giving anything away that an IMDb search wouldn't. As a matter of fact, I'll begin each film with IMDb's synopsis, since they do it better than I can, and I'll save you an interweb search. We'll begin by going back to 1938 and what many would call an early Hitchcock film. Number 13 on our list is The Lady Vanishes. While traveling in continental Europe, a rich young woman realizes that an elderly lady seems to have disappeared from the train. While not as well known as many of the titles on this list, The Lady Vanishes certainly shows the skills behind the camera that Hitchcock had been honing since the mid-20s. The Lady Vanishes is the earliest film to make this cut, and I placed it here to represent much of his early work that is sometimes overlooked. Movies like Blackmail, Sabotage, and The 39 Steps, especially The 39 Steps, which almost made this list, are certainly worth a look, as is this little thriller set on a train. It's hard to disappear from a moving train, or is it? This is much lighter than typical Hitchcock fare and actually features a laugh or two. He had a truly wicked sense of humor, that's for sure. Next up is a claustrophobic thriller set on the high seas from 1944, number 12 on our list, Lifeboat. Several survivors of a torpedoed merchant ship in World War II find themselves in the same lifeboat with one of the crew members of the U-boat that sank their ship. Hitchcock once said, and I quote, "To make a great film, you need three things: the script, and the script." So it's no surprise that he constantly worked with great writers to help create the stories he then brought to life on the screen. Hitchcock's films included stories and screenplays written by or punched up by screenplays Daphne du Maurier, Thornton Wilder, Raymond Chandler, and for Lifeboat, John Steinbeck. Those are some heavy literary hitters right there. I've always touted the importance of writing when it comes to movies or television shows. You can have the most talented actors and directors in the world, but at the end of the day, you just can't rescue a shitty script. You just can't. Lifeboat is not only a wartime tale of survival, it takes on an added dimension when one of the people taken aboard that lifeboat is a German soldier from the U-boat that sank their ship. Suddenly, World War II is being fought on a very small scale in a very small lifeboat. Who can be trusted? One of my favorite things about Hitchcock is that he makes a cameo appearance in all of his films. It's always been extra fun. It's like Where's Waldo, trying to spot Hitch in his films. Since this film takes place entirely at sea in a lifeboat and Hitchcock isn't one of the passengers, I remember the first time I was going to watch this, I was like, his cameo streak has to come to an end. He can't end it. He's not in the movie, and it's all in the lifeboat. So it ends, or does it? He does make a cameo appearance in Lifeboat, and it's in a newspaper advertisement, and it's a before-after weight loss ad. It's just brilliant. Hitch needed to get especially creative to get into that lifeboat. Next at number 11, from 1940, is Rebecca. A self-conscious woman juggles, adjusting to her new role as an aristocrat's wife and avoiding being intimidated by his first wife's spectral presence. This is the only film directed by Alfred Hitchcock to win an Academy Award for Best Picture. Unfortunately, this is his 11th best movie. Rebecca earned a total of 11 Oscar nominations, and they were deserved, especially the acting nominations. One of Hitchcock's trademarks is employing suave villains. You can't get much more suave than Sir Laurence Olivier. Joan Fontaine turns in the performance of her career as the new wife who is totally intimidated by the old wife. This is part mystery, part ghost story, and all Hitchcock. Next on our list is number 10 from 1946. It's Notorious. The daughter of a convicted Nazi spy is asked by American agents to gather information on a ring of Nazi scientists in, where else, South America. How far will she have to go to ingratiate herself with them? Along with working with great writers, Hitchcock also worked with wonderful actors, many of whom he worked with several times. Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart both made 4 films for Hitchcock. Ingrid Bergman and Grace Kelly each starred in 3. Hitchcock once said that he loved working with big names in starring roles, so he didn't have to bother with character development. The audience felt like they knew the lead performer already, and even though it was a new role, so here we go with the action and the plot of the story. We'll take that character development, we'll figure it out along the way. Notorious stars Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant were both excellent, but the only acting Oscar nomination for this film went to the great character actor Claude Rains, and he is fantastic as usual. It's always interesting watching films that were made in the mid to late 40s to see how they handled the politics of World War II. Notorious is heavy on the Nazis and their uranium and the atomic bomb plans. It's an excellent espionage thriller with a terrific cast. Next up is number 9 from 1963. It's The Birds. A wealthy San Francisco socialite pursues a potential boyfriend to a small Northern California town that slowly takes a turn for the bizarre when birds of all kinds suddenly begin to attack people. Birds of all kinds suddenly begin to attack people? Why? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MacGuffin. The reason for the bird attack is never revealed. It's never really even discussed because it doesn't really matter. I'm a reluctant fan of some birds. I respect the birds of prey, your hawk, your falcon, your eagle. But I can totally understand why some people are terrified of them. They can be scary. They can be really scary, especially when they flock together, as birds of a feather tend to do. The Birds was part of Season 2, Episode 14, Where's the Music? Scoreless movies, and the decision to go with an all-natural sound for this was absolute brilliance. Bernard Herrmann was brought in as a sound consultant since there was no score. I guess Herrmann knew music and bird noises. Tippi Hedren stars as the main course for The Birds, and there are many stories about how she was terrorized on the set by both The Birds and Hitchcock. At one point, she had several live birds wired to her. I'm guessing the birds weren't happy about that. Hedren's daughter, Melanie Griffith, was given a doll of her mother's character by Hitchcock himself. The doll was in her costume from the film, and it was also in a little casket. How droll. When rewatching The Birds, the day after rescreening Psycho, something hit me that I never thought of before. When the birds are attacking Tippi Hedren, part of the sequence it's eerily reminiscent of the shower sequence in Psycho. A difference would be that the birds are shown pecking at Hedren, while the knife is never shown touching Janet Leigh in the shower. Next, we go to number 8 on our list. It's from 1958, and it's Vertigo. A former San Francisco police detective juggles wrestling with his personal demons and becoming obsessed with the hauntingly beautiful woman he has been hired to trail, who may be deeply disturbed. Previously mentioned in our City Spotlight San Francisco episode, Vertigo is considered by many to be Hitchcock's greatest film. I am not one of those many, but Vertigo is still tremendous. This is the only film on this list to feature both Edith Head's costumes and Bernard Herrmann's music. Both of them are among the greatest of all time in their respective fields. Hitchcock, when he wasn't working with Edith Head and Bernard Herrmann, also worked with other great costumers like Irene, Adrian, and Vera West. And the same is true for composers, since both Franz Waxman and Dmitri Tiomkin scored Hitchcock movies as well. They are considered among the top movie composers of all time. Hitchcock always surrounded himself with greatness, and it shows in the final product. He brought in Salvador Dali, the surrealist artist, to work on the dream sequences in Vertigo. Amazing. Number 7 on our list, not from 1959, and it's North by Northwest. A New York City advertising executive goes on the run after being mistaken for a government agent by a group of foreign spies and falls for a woman whose loyalties he begins to doubt. North by Northwest features two of the most iconic movie images in film history, and both feature Cary Grant. There's the struggle atop Mount Rushmore, and Grant being menaced by a crop-dusting biplane in a field. This is one of Hitchcock's best wrongly accused movies, as Grant calls for a waiter at the same time someone else is being paged. That someone else is an agent heavily involved in the spy game, and now the bad guys think that the spy is Cary Grant. This mistaken identity is, of course, terrifying, and it's one of the reasons it's a recurring theme in Hitchcock's movies. This is a great cat and mouse thriller that is worth another look. And if you haven't seen it, the first look. Next on our list is from 1960, and it's Psycho. A Phoenix secretary embezzles $40,000 from her employer's client, goes on the run, character on the run, and checks into a remote motel run by a young man under the domination of his mother. When a film changes how people go about their daily life, you know it has made an impact. After the shower scene in Psycho, people reportedly stopped showering and switched to taking baths for a while. I don't blame them. That shower scene is still chilling after 63 years. It's such an iconic piece of film history that an entire documentary was made about it. That's a tremendous movie on its own. A must, with a capital M, for any Hitchcock fan. It's titled 7852, Hitchcock's Shower Scene, and it would make a great twin bill with Psycho. I know, because I did that. Janet Leigh, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, is on the lam and checks into the wrong motel. The rest is cinematic history and a must see if you haven't already done so. I just kind of assume that everyone has seen it. And number 5 on our list from 1943 is Shadow of a Doubt. A teenage girl, overjoyed when her favorite uncle comes to visit the family in their quiet California town, slowly begins to suspect that he is, in fact, the Merry Widow killer sought by the authorities. When Hitchcock was asked about his favorite of his own films, he always mentioned Shadow of a Doubt, and certainly not as well known as Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, or Rear Window, but it's still quintessential Hitchcock. The reason he gave for this film being his favorite was that he loved the idea of evil coming to a small, peaceful town. Joseph Cotten is Uncle Charlie, and Teresa Wright plays his namesake niece. The supporting cast, including a young Hume Cronin, he was young at one time, is most excellent. Uncle Charlie's visit is met with much fanfare by his adoring sister and the entire town. But Charlie is also being followed by 2 detectives who are tracking the Merry Widow killer. This is a slow burn as Cotten transforms from a loving, caring uncle to someone his niece doesn't even recognize. The way Joseph Cotten can switch from loving to menacing in the same scene is impressive. He and this film are underrated. Next on our list, number 4 from 1948 is Rope. 2 men attempt to prove they committed the perfect crime by hosting a dinner party, after strangling their former classmate to death. Also part of Season 2, Episode 14, Where's the Music? Scoreless movies. Rope is a taut thriller centering around 2 friends that murder another friend to test a theory and for the thrill of it, based on the real-life thrill killers Leopold and Loeb. Directly after the murder, the pair host a dinner party. On the guest list for that dinner party are the deceased classmates' father and girlfriend. The body is in a cabinet on which dinner is actually being served. These guys are hardcore. The killers are played by John Dahl and Farley Granger. Well, one of them's hardcore. And it's mesmerizing to see their relationship revealed through their words and their actions. Jimmy Stewart plays their former school headmaster, who is also invited to the get-together. Like Lifeboat, this is a claustrophobic thriller. Rope takes place entirely in one room, the whole movie, the room in which the murder was committed. How does Hitchcock make his trademark cameo? His famous profile is seen out of the window of the apartment in the form of a blinking red neon sign. Brilliant. Next, number 3 on our list, from 1954, Dial M for Murder. A former tennis star arranges the murder of his adulterous wife. The adulterous wife in Dial M for Murder is played by the always wonderful Grace Kelly. I always sided with her even though she was a cheater. How can you want to murder Grace Kelly? Ray Milland is deliciously evil in this as the husband, but the true star of this may be John Williams, the character actor, not the composer, who plays Chief Inspector Hubbard. It's a joy to watch the games being played by the jealous husband and the stoic Chief Inspector. Just when you think you have something all figured out, there's another twist. I tell you to pay special attention to the latchkeys, but they're the MacGuffin, so they really don't matter anyway. Wink, wink. Next, from 1951, number 2 on our list, Strangers on a Train. A psychopath forces a tennis star to comply with his theory that 2 strangers can get away with murder. Farley Granger is back, and his character couldn't be more different than the guy that he played in Rope. In Strangers on a Train, Granger plays tennis pro Guy Haynes, more tennis from Hitchcock, who's trapped in a failed marriage. His wife plays around frequently, so Guy is taken up with the senator's daughter on the side. And come on, Guy, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Guy happens to meet Bruno Antony, played by the marvelous Robert Walker. This is a performance of a career. It is amazing, one of the best cinematic villains ever. And he meets Bruno Antony on a train. It turns out that Bruno is very wealthy, but he hates his domineering father. Bruno comes up with a plan to make both he and Guy happy. Bruno suggests that he kills Guy's wife, and Guy kills Bruno's father. Guy thinks he's crazy to even suggest a thing, and he doesn't even know the half of it. So there you go. There are a dozen delightful films directed by Alfred Hitchcock. You can't miss with any of them, in my opinion. And that's 12 down, and my favorite to go, and it's from 1954. And if you've been keeping score, you've figured this out already. It's Rear Window. A photographer in a wheelchair spies on his neighbors from his Greenwich Village courtyard apartment window and becomes convinced one of them has committed murder, despite the skepticism of his fashion model girlfriend. The photographer, L.B. Jeffries, is played by Hitchcock fave Jimmy Stewart, while the fashion model girlfriend, Lisa Fremont, is played by another Hitchcock fave and favorite of Cinema Wellman, Grace Kelly. There are many reasons why Rear Window is my favorite Hitchcock film. For one, the set is amazing. Hitchcock had a mock-up of the back of a brownstone built. Each apartment, it's 3 stories. Each apartment had electricity, running water, and a working toilet. One of the actresses actually lived in her apartment during the shooting of this film. One of the things Alfred Hitchcock is masterful at is camera movement. Now, all great directors have the ability to make you look exactly where they want you to, but Hitchcock just takes it to another level. Rear Window is packed with voyeuristic images, and he's always there to point out exactly where you should be looking. LB's nurse, he's laid up with a broken leg, is played by the incomparable character actress Thelma Ritter. 6-time Oscar nominee with sadly 0 wins, and that's a travesty. Ritter is amazing in every movie in which she appears. She's one of those actors that I'll watch a movie she's in regardless of what it is. If I see that she's in it, I'm going to DVR it off of TCM. She usually plays a tough, snarky wisecracker. I've seen her go toe-to-toe with some of Hollywood's biggest leading men, and she always gets the better of them. Another reason why Rear Window is my favorite Hitchcock movie is Grace Kelly and how Hitchcock shoots her. Hitch loved Grace Kelly. The camera loved Grace Kelly. Cinema Wellman loves Grace Kelly. Good enough for Hitch, good enough for us. Well, that's it for our first ever Director's Corner episode. If you enjoy suspense and mystery, you can never go wrong with a production involving Sir Alfred Hitchcock. We hope you join us again next week when we'll unpack the best and worst movies screened here at Cinema Wellman during the month of July. Until then, enjoy the summer and take care.